Happy Wednesday, it's Kyle here, and this week we're talking about privilege. So to just jump right into it, there's a lot with privilege. You know, it's a huge um, ball of yarn there. Within the trans community, there is definitely a huge, I would say huge, privilege barrier between trans women and trans men. This is seen in, the amount of assaults taken on trans women versus trans men, as well as the way each is treated. Um, I definitely noticed when I became passing enough in my transition, there was a definite difference in how I was treated. I've had to adjust to that new privilege that I've had as a white man. When I'm, walking on the street by myself and there's a woman who's also by herself, I now have to make sure that she doesn't fear um, because of me. Because, yeah, I'm small, but I think there's always that little inkling of, well, I'm alone and there's a dude behind me. There's a point when a trans guy, if he chooses to transition, becomes passing enough that he needs to become aware of his new status and privileges. Um, as a man. I can't really speak to any other race than being white, but regardless of how you identify, if you're white, there's a privilege that comes along with it, um, inherently, that you should be examining, and um, being a man adds to that privilege. And a lot of times, um, some things I've noticed in other trans guys is once they transition to a passing place, they lose their idea that they do have that privilege, you know. Um, and in an attempt to act more manly and masculine, they take it for granted. And I think personally that's wrong. Yes, you are a man, but you can't lose sight of that privilege that you have. Because at one point you didn't have that privilege. And a lot of other folks don't have that privilege. Um, so my suggestion to anyone out there who doesn't realize, the privileges they have, they need to examine that. And if you're thinking about transitioning, or you're at a place where you have started transitioning, don't forget it. Because there's a point in, I believe, every trans person's life, if they choose to transition, where at one point they felt hopeless. They were treated not so great. People didn't accept them. And just because people don't know or can't tell, because you look manly enough, doesn't mean that you weren't there at one point and other people aren't still going through it. So you have a lot of privilege, and I think that should be used wisely, and not to put others down. So don't become a misogynistic ass. Because, I mean, that's not what a guy should be. And and anyone who tells you that you have to act that way to be a guy can go fuck off. Sorry, I just got tattooed. I'm all tired. That's really all I gotta say is, you know, if you're gonna transition, stay true and don't use your newfound privilege to be an ass. Yeah. So, my Tumblr is down below. Come talk to me if you want to talk. See you next week.